Welcome guys to another MHG video, and in this one we're going to talk a lot about Boba Fett and is he a true Mandalorian? But real quick, I just want to thank all you guys who are subscribing to the channel. For all you guys that are watching the Star Wars content, I really do appreciate it, guys. We are blowing up rather fast, but it's really fun to share my love of Star Wars with all you guys, so I hope you're enjoying the content. So I just want to open the video by saying that this one is purely going to be speculation. I'm going to weave in quite a bit of legends and canon, and most of the stuff that's coming from canon is going to be coming from The Mandalorian. Most of the stuff in legends is going to be the old Mandalorian legends of like Jaster Mereel, just kind of interweaving it as I speculate on some things from the book of Boba Fett, The Mandalorian Season 3, and is Boba Fett a Mandalorian? To start off, I'm going to say I don't think Boba Fett really cares if people think he's a Mandalorian or if he is a Mandalorian. I think he is a man that understands that Mandalore was glass. He thinks it's kind of a lost cause, and he thinks his best bet is basically taking care of himself, especially since he was mostly abandoned by the Mandalorians during the Clone Wars. He's learned a great deal of things from his father Jango, who was trained also in the Mandalorian way and code, and he's used those to survive during the Clone Wars, during the rise of the Empire, and then, of course, during the time of the Empire. So let's just get into it. Let's talk about Boba Fett and is he a Mandalorian? Kind of where I want to start this conversation is when Din is on Tython, and Boba Fett tracks him there and requests his armor from the Mando himself, Din. What I think is interesting here is kind of the evolution that we see from Boba Fett, right? What we see mostly during the Clone Wars is a more savage Boba Fett, one who is bent on simply destroying the Jedi, destroying Mace Windu, and getting revenge for his father's death, Jango Fett. So there we are, standing there, Boba Fett, ready to take out the Mandalorian. I feel like he's a changed man. I feel like the Boba Fett we have here has gone under a transformation of sorts. I don't see him as bloodthirsty and as bent on vengeance when he's facing Din. One, because he doesn't just immediately kill him and take his armor, which he could have easily done because, hey, it's Boba Fett. But we see someone that respects Din, respects the Mandalorian code, and maybe is remembering and honoring his father's code a little bit more. He tells Mando that is his armor. That was his father's before his. Mando asks him a really important question. Said, did you take the code? Are you a Mandalorian? Because the way the Mandalorians see it is Beskar belongs only to Mandalorians. If you have Beskar, they would not hesitate to kill you and take it, because the way that they see it is it only belongs to the ancestral hands of the Mandalorians. If you have some, that means you either killed a Mandalorian or stole it or you're with the Empire. So they justify killing you on the spot and taking it back as it's their sacred duty and keepers of the Beskar. So as they're having this conversation, Boba Fett tells him he's been tracking him and that it's his father's armor, and then asks him about the code. One of the things I want to draw attention to is when Boba Fett says this.
I give my allegiance to no one.
So I found that really interesting that Boba Fett said he owes his allegiance to no one, and we'll kind of backtrack and go back on that and why I think that's important. But one of the other big key things that is huge, because this used to just be legends, right? Now it's officially canon, is when Boba Fett shows them his chain code and he shows that his father before him, Jango, was also a foundling. Now we're going to kind of venture into legends here. And legends, the background before this is that Jango Fett had been basically rescued by his adopted father, Jaster Mereel. Jango's family had been killed in a big battle between the Mandalorians, Death Watch, who was going against the new Mandalorians, or the true Mandalorians as they used to call them, who was led by Jaster Mereel. Jaster Mereel was also considered the Mandalore. He had earned that honor through battle, and he was now their pseudo-leader. So this is really important because Din is kind of identifying with Boba Fett. His father was a foundling. He's a foundling, which makes Boba Fett a second-generation foundling. I think him showing the chain code and showing that Boba is true to his word and man of honor, not the man of vengeance that we previously saw before his transformation in the Sarlacc pit. He decides to go ahead and give it to him because it was originally his father's, who was a foundling and a Mandalorian, so it belongs to him. Now I want to fast forward a little bit when Boba Fett and Mando are teaming up together to go face Moff Gideon. One of the people that they try to recruit is Bo-Katan. So if you remember, they have this whole bar scene where Boba Fett comes up and he's with Mando and they're saying, hey, we're going to go take the Darksaber, blah, 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 right? What I find really interesting is how Bo-Katan immediately lashes out at Boba Fett and calls him not a Mandalorian. Boba Fett, of course, says, I never claimed to be. But what is interesting is while they're fighting, Bo-Katan says something, and I may be just looking into this a little too much, but Bo-Katan says, if we had shown that much fight, we never would have lost Mandalore. Now, she could simply be referring to her sidekick, and Din, but there's also Boba Fett that's standing in the room with them. I may be reaching a little bit there, but that's interesting that she would goat Boba Fett and then make a reference to saying we would never have lost Mandalore. And we know the history of Bo-Katan. Her sister was the rightful ruler of Mandalore during the Clone Wars. Eventually, you know what happened to her. Maul kills her. We know that since Bo-Katan is basically royalty, quote unquote, she would have an ancestral claim to the throne. Of course, we know this is not technically how it works with Mandalorians, because the Mandalorians are kind of the strongest and the fittest fighter as the one that is deemed to lead the Mandalorians. But it's really interesting detail and really interesting backstory there. What's also interesting is that we also see that Boba Fett has repainted his armor. On one shoulder, he has the great mythosaur. On his chest, he has the ancient emblem of his house and clan from Jaster Mereel, which in Legends, that was wiped out by Pre Vizsla. There's a great book called the Bounty Hunter Code Book where Pre Vizsla talks about how he doesn't believe that Jaster is worthy of having a clan or being a Mandalorian, and he wants to completely wipe that out of existence. What's really interesting as well is in the margins, Jango Fett talks about this whole situation with Death Watch and Pre Vizsla. What we learn is a little bit of history about Jango and Jaster and how they were more honorable Mandalorians. Jaster issued a new guideline while he was Mandalore called the Super Commando Codex, which basically meant that Mandalorians who wanted to be more warrior in their culture could show their honor by being honorable mercenaries, which Jango Fett and Boba Fett would fall into that category. We also see a new detail on his helmet, which the first time I saw this, I completely missed. So in Empire Strikes Back and on, we see Boba Fett with yellow markings on the side of his helmet. Mandalorians paint their armor because it has a lot of significance to them. I didn't know this, but after looking it up, the yellow signifies vengeance, which makes sense because we see a very vengeful Boba Fett in the original trilogy. While now it's painted a red, which signifies to the Mandalorians honoring a family member. So I think what we're seeing here is a Boba Fett who kind of had a Jonah moment. He went into the belly of the whale with the Sarlacc pit, and he came out of it now kind of thinking back on his life more and wanting to honor his father, wanting to honor his heritage. So this brings me back to the point where I talked about Boba Fett saying he owes his allegiance to no one. Could this mean the reason why Boba Fett says that is because he believes ancestrally he is the true Mandalore? He believes he owes his allegiance to no Mandalorian. They owe their allegiance to him, which would be a very good reason of why Bo-Katan really goats him and tries to kind of come after him, saying that no, you're just a clone. You're not a real Mandalorian. And this is my final point, and when things get a little crazy, guys, with my speculation and theories here. At the very end of season 3 of The Mandalorian, we see Boba Fett walking in with Fennec, and he walks into Jabba's palace. We see a throne set up, and we see Boba Fett take the throne, right? When have we seen this previously in Star Wars? Well, history tends to repeat itself. If we recall back to the Clone Wars, Death Watch, or more importantly, Pre Vizsla, wanted to have the throne of Mandalore and control Mandalore, and the way that he was going to go about doing it was establishing the underworld that answered directly to him, that he would be the king of the underworld and control the underworld and use that to his advantage to eventually gain power and gain the throne of Mandalore. So this is where it gets crazy, guys. Could this be Boba Fett taking the throne of the underworld? Because we kind of see it right there in that last scene as he sits on the throne. So could he be taking the throne of the underworld? And what we're going to get in the Book of Fett is him basically orchestrating and gaining and accumulating power from the underworld and control to be the king of the underworld so that he can go back and take Mandalore. And we know that the Book of Boba Fett is supposed to release before Mandalorian Season 3, so it could very easily tie into Mandalorian Season 3, where I think we're going to see a lot of friction between Bo-Katan and Din, especially since Din has a Darksaber and is considered the rightful ruler of Mandalore now. There could be a lot of friction between Boba Fett, Din, and Bo-Katan. I don't know, guys. It's going to be really interesting. And I think Boba Fett really is a Mandalorian. I don't think he cares to be a Mandalorian. I think he realized that Mandalore is basically a lost cause. It's been glassed. But now that he's getting older, and like myself, as I'm getting older, you reflect back on your family and your heritage. And he may be wanting to retake that. He may be wanting to reclaim that. But again, he's also very practical. He knows it's almost a lost cause. That's why he's just a simple man making his way through the universe like his father. What do you guys think? Do you think this is enough information and context clues that Boba Fett could be a Mandalorian? We know that Favreau and Filoni are bringing a lot of legends and making them into canon. Would you guys like to see that? And we can't just take the film telling us that he's not a Mandalorian at face value. If we did that, then we would assume that Rey is a nobody. But we will learn later on and The Rise of Skywalker, she is actually more than a nobody. Anyways, guys, let me know what you guys think. Appreciate you guys watching the video, and may the Force be with you.